More justice has been served for Mallory Beach. Weird phone calls between Buster and his father, Alec. And Buster's getting ready to sit down for his first interview. We're going to talk about all of that in today's video. Hello, Sofa Squad, and welcome back to the sofa. The sofa's still back there behind me with Mr. Roscoe P. Coltrane holding it down. He's our little mascot, and my name is Paul. Now, today we're going to be talking about a few updates with the Alec Murdaugh case and the cases that surround that. If you're unfamiliar with this case, Alec Murdaugh is going to be serving out the rest of his shameful days in prison. He was recently convicted of taking the life of his son Paul and his wife Maggie. This came on the tail end of literally him being completely exposed for ripping essentially all of South Carolina off. But he was stealing from clients of their law firm, and he was doing very shady stuff. And so this segued into him ending up taking the life of his wife and one of his sons. Now, his surviving son, Buster, is who we'll be talking about with a couple of things today. And so that's it. But first, let's get to pretty much the most important thing, I think, which is that of Mallory Beach, an update with that. Now, Mallory Beach, in case you haven't followed this, she was the young lady who lost her life in the boat wreck. This was the wreck that Paul, the son of Alec, who Alec ended up killing, he was driving the boat. He wrecked it. Him and a bunch of his friends went out one evening. He was drunk. He was all over the place. And his friends were like, look, let us drive. He wouldn't do it. He was being, basically a jerk. And one thing led to another. He wrecked the boat. And unfortunately, Mallory Beach lost her life that night. It was very tragic. She was a beautiful young lady, had a lot to offer. And, that time was stolen from her. So a key part of that is that the alcohol that they were drinking, Paul had secured that using his brother Buster, his name is Buster, his ID from a gas station. Okay, it was like a tongue twister there. Okay, so that being said, there's been lawsuit after lawsuit you can imagine, and so that's going to be one of the first updates we talk about today. Now, what we're going to do mostly for this video is we're going to look at some news articles, and I'll go through those, and then we'll also be listening to a little bit of a phone call. So let's go ahead, now that we have all the backstory to it, let's go ahead and start with some articles about the Mallory Beach update. Now you can read along with me. I'll put them on the screen here as I read from my computer. Now it says, family of Mallory Beach teen killed in Murdaugh boat crash announces $15 million settlement with convenience store company. This is by Diane Gallagher for CNN. This came out Monday, July 17th. Let's go ahead and move on to the second page here. Now it says here, a global settlement for 15 grand was reached Sunday with the convenience store company Parker's Kitchen and owner Greg Parker. An attorney for the family of the teenager Mallory Beach confirmed to CNN. It says the Beach family believes the settlement will serve as a warning to all the Parkers of the world who might make an illegal sale of alcohol to a minor, that they will be held accountable for their wrongful conduct if they do, the attorney told CNN. These settlements won't bring Mallory back, but we hope they do save someone else's son or daughter. Let's move on to page 3 of this. Now it says, with the settlement, the civil trial scheduled to begin next month will be canceled, and Alec Murdaugh had been scheduled to be deposed for the trial in the wrongful death case. He was listed as the second primary defendant in the civil suit. Then it goes on to quote, all of these cases were settled with Parker's and Mallory Beach's wrongful death case settled with them for $15 million. Now listen to that real quick. All of these cases were settled with Parker's, and Mallory Beach's wrongful death case settled with them for $15 million, explained Tinsley. We are winding up the remaining claims against Murdaugh with a court's receiver who has taken all of his assets. So just hold on one second there. So they got hit by a ton of lawsuits over this, right? And so I find that very interesting. Now, again, on that also, where it's like, Alec was going to be deposed and all this kind of stuff. Come on, right? What was he going to say? it was just going to keep dredging things up. So I'm personally glad the settlement was reached, for more than one reason, obviously. But again, so that her family doesn't have to keep going through the court system. God only knows the games that would have been played if Alec Murdaugh was going to be involved, right? Okay, so let's keep going. So it says the settlement was prompted by two major decisions from a judge just days before, according to an attorney for Parker's. Last week, a judge denied Parker's request for its case to be tried separately from Alec Murdaugh and for a change in venue from Hampton County. Parker's attorneys argued the Murdaugh name had become too toxic in the small community for their clients to get a fair trial. Now, I mean, hello, yeah, absolutely, right? That name is smeared in the mud, right? I mean, it's associated with absolute horridness. I mean, honestly, like the remaining Murdaughs who are no longer, part of this, I mean, their name is tainted, right? I mean, look at Buster, look at his uncles, like all these other people. Alec destroyed this family name. Now, this is not to say that maybe other people didn't have some stuff going, but I mean, for sure, he didn't do it any favors. Okay, let's read the last little page of it. Okay, it says the other passengers on the boat at the time of the crash have also settled their claims against Parker's, according to attorneys. So this is what I was talking about a second ago. So they've run them through the ringer. Now, here's the thing. They own a chain of gas stations and whatnot, and lots of them, apparently. I mean, But granted, that's $15 million from one case right there. So I'd be curious to know what the rest of them are. It says the Beach family did not settle a separate civil conspiracy lawsuit against Parker, his store, and others that alleges harassment and centers on the public release of sensitive investigation photos, including of Mallory Beach's body. That suit is ongoing. I mean, seriously, bless her heart. Okay, and I wasn't even aware of this part until I read this article. And so I'm going to look into that further, and if there's something that's worthy of reporting back on okay, what's this lawsuit about? But it sounds like this got grimy, and I'm not talking about obviously the death, right? I mean, that was terrible. I mean, the documentary, if you haven't watched it, that part right there rips your heart out when they're showing the body cam footage of the evening and the boat happens and Mallory's gone, right? It gives me goosebumps. I cannot imagine having to walk away from that body of water, leaving your child, your girlfriend. It rips your heart out. So I didn't know this other stuff had gone on about the release of these photos and stuff like that. I mean, it's terrible, right? So we'll keep our eye on that one. No. Let's go on to the next thing. Okay, now for this, we're going to be going over that phone call that was released. Now, this is Alec Murdaugh's first released prison phone call. It's a 42-second conversation with his son, Buster. Now, this article you see on the screen is by, again, Diane Gallagher, CNN, July 14th. And what I want to do before I play it, because it gets real scratchy, is I want to just read. It's very quick, obviously, 42 seconds. But I want to read the thing right here, and then we'll listen to the tone of the voice and that type of stuff, because I am, curious about it. Or I have some thoughts on it. So you can read along with me on the screen here. Now, Fit News, this is your source for this case right here. So if you are following this case and keeping up with it, make sure that you subscribe to Fit News and that kind of stuff. Now, there's a podcast and whatnot that delve super deep into this case. But if you're looking for these kind of updates and that type thing, just be sure to follow Fit News on any platform that you can, because they have up-to-date stuff. So, okay, so it says the first to publish the phone call along with other records from the Murdaugh's time in South Carolina State Prison. So he opens the greeting with, "Hey, buddy." And then Buster hastily responds, "Hey, I don't have a whole lot of time. I just boarded a ferry to go back to Hilton Head from Dalfouski Island." The one-time personal lawyer notes he's been trying to call his son, adding, "I was supposed to call you while you were with Jim about this meeting. How about text Jim and let him know I'm trying to call him?" Jim likely refers to Murdaugh's defense attorney, Jim Griffin. We saw him in the trial. And then this is where the phone call gets a little bit scratchy and whatnot. And then Buster comes back with a real flat "okay." And then, "Did he talk to you about that, about the thing that I told him?" Alec asked as static breaks up the call. "No, I can't really understand you either," says Buster. "I'm going to leave word with Jim and he'll be in touch with you," says Murdaugh, who after several seconds adds, "Love you." Buster replies, "Love you too." And then Alex is "Proud of you." And then Buster says, "Thanks." Okay, so there's that. So that's the gist of it. But now what I want to do, and that's really not, well, there's a couple of things that I feel like, in it. And there's no big whammy here, right? It's just interesting, that type thing. So let's listen to it and just the tone of voice, right?
Hey, buddy. Hey, I don't have a whole lot of time. I just boarded a ferry to get back to Hilton Head Island from Tuskegee. Yeah, I know. I've been trying to call. I was supposed to call you while you were with Jim about this meeting. But anyway, how about text him and let him know I'm trying to call him? Okay. Did he talk to you about that? About the things that I told him? No, I can't really understand you either. All right. I'm gonna be word with Jim, and he'll be in touch with you. Love you. All right. Okay. I'm proud of you. Thanks.
Okay, so a couple of things here. First of all, one thing that I find interesting is how, and this has been throughout the whole thing, Alec is always very, like, from what we hear of these phone calls, and not just this one, but other ones that we heard, like in the trial and whatnot, he's always kind of happy-go-lucky in there, right? Like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what I expect of him. You know what I'm saying? I guess part of me is thinking, okay, you've been convicted of killing your wife and son and literally ripping off all your business partners, vulnerable populations around your town, anyone you could really rip off, right? And so I guess part of me is just like wanting him to sound sad or something, right? But I just never get that from him. But I mean, that's my problem, I guess, right? Expecting that out of him. Okay. So Buster sounds completely disinterested, right? Now, these are the things that I'm curious about, and these are the things that, and we'll kind of segue, this will be like a double conversation, because like I said, and I'll talk about it more specific here in a minute, but Buster's getting ready to sit down and give his first sit down interview or whatever. And one of the questions that I'm very curious with Buster, because he's basically had to take over, in my opinion, as far as I know, and of course I don't know them personally, but from what I can tell just through our experience and following the case through the newspapers and stuff like that, or online, whatever. I mean, he's kind of like acting as the man of the house type situation. His dad's in prison for the rest of his life. They're trying to finagle all this different stuff. Now, you heard Alex say about the thing, you talked to him about the thing. Alex is always calling Buster with something cryptic. Did you talk to so-and-so about this? Whether it's putting extra money on other people's books, which he's not supposed to be doing. So it sounds like that. And one thing that I get from Buster, and that I feel like I do, my interpretation, is that almost like this, like, okay, what is Dad scheming now? When is this gonna, what is he trying to do now? Lay off your already convicted, in prison for the rest of your life. Just stop. You know what I'm saying? Like that kind of a vibe. And it could be as simple as trying to put, money on two people's books, which you're not supposed to do, like that he did with that one dude. And again, this is just my interpretation, just my opinion. I could be completely wrong. But, Buster just kind of sounds over it. Now, also, he's on a ferry, so he can't really hear him, and he's in a hurry. And here comes Dad talking about, have you talked to Jim and this, that, and the other. Also, Buster is, he's a young man. He's, I don't know if he's married. I can't remember if he's married to the girl, but he has a life, right? And so I can't imagine, number one, losing my mother and my brother. Number two, going through this whole scenario, right, where it's like your dad's done all this insane stuff. I would just, it makes you grow up really quick is what I'm getting at. And so that part to me is probably part of why I'm interpreting his, tone of voice and that kind of thing is just almost like annoyed. Now, other phone calls that we've heard in the past to Buster, I don't think that him being like, okay, love you too, that sounds normal to me. I don't think that's abnormal, but just in general, he just sounds like, to me, just stressed with his dad on the phone. And Alex over there, well, hey there, boy, I'm just trying to get hold of old Jim, boy. Here, go on, let him know I'm calling, boy. Kind of a thing, this happy-go-lucky, and Buster's probably got all these stressors going, like, dude, I'm still picking up your pieces, you know what I mean? And there's a lot of pieces that you left shattered everywhere. Okay, so now let's talk about the sit-down interview that he's going to be doing and what we can expect out of that. I'm going to put a couple little screenshots up here on the screen right here so we can talk about it. So as you see, this article is by Lynn Riddle. It says, Buster Murdaugh to be in a new series about South Carolina murders of mother and brother, when and how to watch. And let's go on over here. So it says a new docuseries will feature Buster Murdaugh in his first interview since his father, Alec, was sent to prison for murdering his mother and brother. The case against Alec for killing his wife Maggie and son Paul has been the subject of many series, but through it all, Buster has kept silent. He did testify for his father during the trial earlier this year. He was convicted. Murdaugh is being held in an undisclosed prison in South Carolina. He's appealing the conviction. The new series to air on streaming service Fox Nation on September 12th promises a behind-the-scenes look at the case from the defense side with exclusive video before and during the trial and interviews with defense attorneys Dick Harpootlian and Jim Griffin. So, that being said, what would be interesting to me if you've watched The Staircase is if it had any vibe like that, right? And I'm talking about like anywhere from us seeing the true legal tactics that they were trying to go with, all the way to like the cringe effect of being like, bro, it ain't gonna look good for you. We can go ahead and tell you that right now. We don't need no, psych up in here to guess that, kind of a thing. So I'll be very curious to see that. But also, I'm very curious to see, like, are we going to hear, not just from Buster sitting down talking, but more of that footage behind the scenes, like, what was that like to go through that? Because it was like all eyes were on Buster, right, during this. Like, his body language, and he did some things that weren't very appropriate in the courtroom, that I don't agree with the way he did, the middle finger thing and stuff like that. I mean, they were rude, right? It was not the respectful thing to do, and given the situation. And he did testify for his father, but it didn't hold much water to me. So I'm very curious because this is a snapshot into that. Now, I've seen in some of like the tabloid types of Daily Mail of like Buster spotted out shopping and stuff like that. And regardless of how I might feel about his actions or him and stuff like that, again, he's not been convicted of anything, right? He's, free to go. And of course he has to go to the store, you know what I'm saying? Like, of course he has to go shopping and do these things, right? He's a young adult. He's going to be out doing stuff. He has a life. And so, I don't really, that's just like whatever. This is the kind of thing I'm interested in hearing because he's willingly doing it, right? He's going to sit down and it's like, okay, you want to talk? What do you have to say after living through this? Does he still stand by his father? I'm sure he does because, again, with cases like this where it's like family members and all this kind of stuff, what are you going to do? If he says, I think my dad did it, I now believe my dad did it, well, hello, I mean, what an awkward conversation that would be. And he clearly is going to have to continue to have something to do with his dad because of all this, cumbersome, tied into him and all this kind of stuff, and his family member is still in the law and all that, right? It's very complicated. So whether he believes that his dad did or not, I don't think we would ever hear that honest answer. I think he would stand by his side. So that's what I'm just curious to see, if we can get a glimpse behind everything, to see if we can be like, oh, wait a minute, I feel like he really doesn't believe it, or whatever. So anyways, that is it. Let me know what you think down in the comment section. And that's it. I appreciate it. Thank you for being here, and thank you for hanging out with Mr. Roscoe. And in fact, drop some sofas over there for Mr. Roscoe. And until we gather around in the comment section to continue the conversation, whoosh, I'll see y'all there.